by the way. So again, it's really important. I mean, 3 to 6 years old. Stage 4 is latency, and this is middle to late childhood, so 6 to 12 years old. The conflict here is industry versus inferiority, and this is really, the main event here is school. Are you keeping up with your peers, or are you falling behind? The positive resolution is you're keeping up with peers, you're being encouraged at home. Negative resolution is failure to keep up with peers, and then leads to pervasive feelings of inferiority and inadequacy. Like, okay, I'm not good enough. And that's a bad thing to feel as a human, at any age. But when you start feeling it this young, because you weren't keeping up with the times with your peers and your classmates and all that kind of stuff and your friends, and you weren't being encouraged to continue to strive for that, it leads to feelings of inferiority and inadequacy. And as a human, to feel less than creates problems, okay? Not just problems, but possibly disorders. So again, 6 to 12 years old, right? Are you keeping up with your peers or not? Then we finally get to adolescence, which would be what you would be in right now or coming out of right now. Right now they're saying it's 12 to 18 years old. I think recently research has said we're going to push that a little bit, possibly to 20. But the psychosocial conflict is identity versus role confusion. So, what is the big event? Peer relationships. Not school, not GPA, nothing like that. It is peer relationships. A positive resolution through experimentation with different roles, okay? The adolescent develops an integrated and stable self-definition, forms commitments to future adult roles. You build your adult identity. That is what you do during this time. You pick and choose the parts that are working for you. It's like, ooh, I acted this way towards that person and that happened. Okay, that's not going to be a part of who I am anymore. It's experimentation. It's seeing what works and what doesn't. All right, that is adolescence. That is identity versus role confusion. The negative resolution, an apathetic adolescent, not caring, or one who experiences pressures and demands from others may feel confusion about his or her identity and role in society. Maybe somebody is not accepting you for who you truly are, right? So, and that could be anything, or your personality traits, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. But they can conditionally accept you for who you are. So as long as you're giving them what you want, you are accepted. Now, if that's happening, you might have these pressures and demands from others, right? To be a certain way. You don't know. You don't know your true self because you're not experimenting with it, because you're being held back by somebody who's making you act a certain way, because that's the only way that you're getting acceptance from them. I hope that makes sense to you. But that's the negative resolution. So what do you want to do here? You want to pick and choose the parts that are working for you and carry them into adulthood. And you want to leave behind the things that are not. Stage 6, young adulthood, 18 to 40 years old, probably 20 to 40 years old now. I'm in this stage. It says psychosocial conflict, intimacy versus isolation. And I don't think intimacy is what you think it is. It's not sexual intimacy here. It's more or less like intimacy as in relationships in general, friends, work. Then you could get into possibly significant others and all that kind of stuff, partners. Versus isolation, which would be not doing that kind of stuff, not building those relationships. So the important event is relationships. A positive resolution. By establishing lasting and meaningful relationships, the young adult develops a sense of connectedness and intimacy with others, which is a very important thing. You look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you see that thing. You see it like, oh man, this social aspect is actually a need that the human strives for. I mean, we're social animals, social creatures. Negative resolution because of fear of rejection or excessive self-preoccupation in the young adult. They're unable to form close, meaningful relationships, and they become psychologically isolated. And they can build walls and never let anybody in. All right? It's a possibility. It happens probably more often than you think it is for young adults. But again, to come out of this positively, you need to search for intimacy. And that is, again, not sexual intimacy, but we're talking about building meaningful relationships with others, either in work, friends, or your partnership. Stage 7, middle adulthood, I'm almost there, 40 to 65 years old. The psychosocial conflict here is generativity versus stagnation. The main event here is parenting, but let's say that you don't have any kids, so what is the main event here? It's just giving back to the next generation. That's what it is. That's what generativity is. So the positive resolution, through child rearing, caring for others, productive work, community involvement, the adult expresses unselfish concern for the welfare of the next generation. I think teachers do this pretty naturally, right? I mean, I've got kids, so I'm going to end up doing it no matter what. But teachers are born for generativity, right? To give back to the next generation, to make sure that they're okay, to set you up for success. But there's the opposite, right? So the negative resolution, self-indulgence, self-absorption, preoccupation with one's own needs, leads to a sense of stagnation, boredom, lack of meaningful accomplishments, and you might search for something to give you something, some sort of meaningfulness, right? A midlife crisis, right? Maybe you buy a Corvette whenever you're 55 because you don't have any kids and you're having a midlife crisis and you need some substance to your life, so I'm going to get a Corvette. That's just an example, and that doesn't always work necessarily there, but that is an example. So, are you giving back? You got to give back to move forward, is what Eric Erickson says. And then finally, stage 8, late adulthood, 65 to death. Again, as we get more and more modern medicine comes out, our life expectancy goes up and up and up. They say that the person who is going to live to 150 has already been born. So life expectancy, who knows? It's going to be wild. But from 65 to death, you've got to deal with some stuff. It's kind of accepting your life path towards the end, right? Death is a part of life. So ego integrity versus despair. So the important event here is reflection on life. The positive resolution in reviewing his or her life, the older adult experiences a strong sense of self-acceptance, meaningfulness in his or her accomplishments. Basically saying, you know what, I did the best I could, and I left it better than I found it, and all that kind of stuff, all those cliches. But then, you know this, you've run into these curmudgeonly old people, and they are bitter, right? Negative resolution. In looking back on his or her life, the older adult experiences regret, dissatisfaction, disappointment about his or her life and accomplishments. Yeah. Maybe that's it, right? Maybe that old curmudgeonly man or woman who doesn't tip well, yeah. Maybe they just are dissatisfied with how their life has gone and they take it out in other ways by being mean, right? Yes, officer, I know it's fireworks night, but they're setting off fireworks. I love that quote. All right, so that's the end of part 2. Join me through part 3. I'll see you when I see you.